Hey you guys, welcome back to another video. I'm so glad that you're here, and I decided to come outside because it's such a nice day to do this video. Man, listen, I had no idea that there was this trend that was happening on social media that was calling for people to hurry up and prepare because that the rapture was going to happen September the 23rd.
Alright guys, I feel like Jesus has really impressed this on my heart. Guys, if you don't believe the rapture is going to happen in September 23rd, and I'm not saying this out of pride, I'm saying this out of love. Like, to love, and this is not for the people who are iffy about it. This is for the mockers and scoffers. The Christian mockers and scoffers. Guys, if you don't believe in the rapture, and if you don't, especially if you don't believe in the rapture, but if you don't believe that Jesus is going to rapture his bride on September 23rd and the 24th, and then say terrible things about and to your brothers and sisters, and call yourself a Christian, do you even have a relationship with Jesus?
Okay, guys, I think I have more Feast of Trumpets rapture confirmation, and this may be my favorite one so far. I posted a video yesterday of 3 minor Feast of Trumpets rapture confirmations. And the first one I talked about was with my 9-year-old daughter, and how the Lord spoke something to her in a different language, and it turned out to be Rosh Kodesh, which means new moon. Now, why this was significant is because of the vision he gave her prior to that. Go watch the video before this if you want more details. I don't want to drag this video on forever. Rosh Kodesh means new moon. And Feast of Trumpets is the only feast that is centered around the new moon. And the Lord has been showing me in scripture for the last week in Amos 8 how this ties to the rapture and to the beginning of tribulation. That whole chapter is about that. And it mentions the new moon, and it mentions twice about how the Lord will be turning their feasts into mourning and lamentation and grieving. So it ties in to the rapture, the new moon feast, the Feast of Trumpets, the rapture and tribulation beginning. As I was getting my 3-year-old ready for nap, he was not wanting to take a nap. I was chasing him all over the room, trying to get him to put a pull-up on so he could lay down. And he started saying something over and over again, like he says it all the time. Let me show it to you so you can see for yourself. Hudson, hold on. Can you tell me what you were just saying?
Rosh Kodesh.
Say it again. What?
Rosh Kodesh.
Rosh Kodesh?
Yes.
Why are you saying that?
Okay, I'm literally about to crash out. So I am super persuadable, and I've been on Rapture Talk for like the past, I don't know, hour. A couple things. First of all, are we not scared? Come on.
And so I kept it in my spirit. I knew, but I didn't know why. God didn't tell me why. So I was walking with this until
you make it sound. And sorry, I'm going to be funny as well now. I'll try to be funny as well.
Yeah, no
occasion
problem.
1, it's only the trumpets. You heard the trumpets. Then occasion 2, now you're in your house and you're in your bedroom,
Yes.
and bang, you hear these sounds again.
Yeah, no, I'm in my sitting room, not my bedroom.
In your sitting room. You're in your
Yeah.
house and you hear.
Yes.
I sometimes have funny sounds in my ears as well, Adani.
No.
Why do you ascribe this immediately? I'm just trying to be cynical. I'm just trying to be
No, you can.
a healthy dose of cynicism.
Yes, my friend. No. The Lord blew it so loud. I ran out of the complex to look over the wall at the back to see where's the guy blowing this trumpet.
Since they think it's rapture today.
At this point, I've got nothing to lose but to continue to believe. I gotta stand firm on what God has shown me until I know for a fact that it's not true. And the original confirmation that God gave me for September was, let's fly 9:25. That is the sentence that he gave me. Let's fly 9:25. And all this time, I thought 9:25 just meant September 2025, as in the 9th month of 2025. But I'm realizing now that 9:25 is literally the 25th of the 9th. 25th of September. So based on that recent realization, I have to see this through all the way until the 25th.
Now, just let me be clear as we continue with this video. I am coming from a place of someone who was in Christianity for well over 40 years. Okay, so when it comes to the rapture and its teachings, well, this is something that was taught to me quite extensively, to say the least. It's something that I taught other people. I personally believed it. It's something I taught my children. This is an ideology that was very near and dear to me. And quite honestly, it was really scared into me because, you know, if you're of my age range, many of you remember those movies, those rapture movies from back in the day, like in the late 70s, early 80s. And I'm talking about Thief in the Night, Distant Thunder, Prodigal Planet, and there's probably a few others too that I'm missing. Oh, there was another one called The Burning Hell. And these were Christian movies that were quite effective in really solidifying in the minds of people that if you don't get your life right, well, you're going to miss the rapture and you're going to bust hell wide open. So as I'm talking in this video, I just want people to be ultra clear with that we're not making fun and we're not making light of anything. But truth has to reign even with topics like this. So where did this whole idea of a rapture where people were going to be disappeared in the middle of the night and all that stuff, where did that come from? Well, to find that out, we have to go back to the 1830s. There was a young woman by the name of Margaret MacDonald who lived in Scotland, and she had a dream or vision that this exact thing was going to happen, that Jesus was going to come like a thief in the night, basically, and was going to do this emergency, immediate evac of all those faithful believers. And so you have to understand too, during those days, that was TikTok. When you read old newspapers and publications, you will often find articles where people would have these very sensationalized takes on maybe a new land that they discovered, or describing the people that they just met, or a dream or a vision. This was pretty common back then. So like I said, this was like their social media. This was their TikTok. Now entering another person by the name of John Nelson Darby. Now, for those of you who are in Christianity or been in Christianity, or you're very familiar with the Bible, you will know his last name, Darby. Darby himself took this idea, this basic idea about this immediate, sudden disappearing of people, and built upon it. And he's the one that's responsible for this teaching called dispensationalism. That is something I'm not going to get into now in this video, but he is the guy that is credited for coming up with this type of teaching. And dispensationalism, in a nutshell, is basically a belief that God is going to come back and snatch his people up before he brings judgment on the rest of the world. Now, I want to play for you this video clip of a person that I found on TikTok that actually, I think, did a pretty good explanation about John Darby and who he was, and really what this whole rapture thing was connected to. And as we go into this video a little bit further, you're going to see us come back to this underlying theme that he's talking about in this video. So I really encourage you to hang on in this video.
The guy that basically made up the rapture is also the original Christian Zionist. His name is John Nelson Darby, and this is a photograph we have of him because he did this in the 1830s. The rapture is not something that was in the Bible. It came out of this guy's mind. He founded a branch of Christianity called dispensationalism, and he preached about a pre-tribulation rapture where all the good Christians would get snapped up. And in order for that to happen, the Jews needed to be in Israel in order to facilitate his end times prophecies. So he basically came up with the concept of Christian Zionism as a side effect of his rapture nonsense. And gave the Jewish Zionists necessary allies in their fight to steal Palestine. There are very few people in history that have caused more problems than this man. All that crazy shit that evangelicals talk about, fucking the end of the world, and then allying with Israel, and then basically giving Palestine to the Israelis. You can thank this guy. And like very few people know this guy's name. I don't know why, but John Nelson Darby, that's him. He sucks.
Now, before we continue, I think this is a good time for me to give you heads up that on October the 12th of 2025, we are going to be doing a seminar. It's called Breaking the Chains, The Journey Beyond Belief. And this is going to be a very exciting Zoom session that we're going to do. It's going to be about 4 to 5 hours. So it's going to be quite extensive, where we start in looking at our testimony. And I'm talking my wife and I, and because we have a background in Christianity, of course, in the Hebrew Israelite movement, and we're going to be sharing our personal testimony. But of course, it's not just that, but we're also going to we're going to look at the Bible as is, and we're going to hold the Bible up to actual factual history, and we're going to look at the main pillars that actually hold the Bible up and its message. So we're not going to go through everything in the Bible, but we're going to look specifically at the main claims of the Bible, such as the Garden of Eden claim, or the Great Flood, and we're going to be looking at the parting of the Red Sea, and the miracles of Jesus and who Jesus is and all of that, and actually comparing it to actual factual history. And this is here to inform and to provide you with a ton of information that you can look up yourself. The goal here is not to convert you into a new ideology or religion or belief. The goal here is simple, is to basically to give the whole picture, so that you as an individual can be well informed on what you are staking your life on, and whatever you do with that information afterwards, well, that's completely up to you. So make sure you check it out. The link to the class will be below. Now, the one thing about the whole rapture teaching is that it became a very valuable tool for Christianity in the years after John Darby and all of that, because what it did, it created for Christians and Bible believers a vehicle of escapism, because during those times we had all kinds of wars, you had poverty, you had famine, and the church had to establish itself as a place of refuge, a place of hope, and all of that. And so this is why the whole rapture thing became, let's say, the carrot on the stick to keep people motivated, to keep investing, to keep following, to keep attending church. And so even to this day, you still see that this is quite an effective tool. And so one of the things that we're definitely going to be covering in this class is that when you read Thessalonians, Matthew, and John, the scriptures that a lot of Christians pull from to prove that the rapture is something is going to happen, is context. Context is very key when reading the Bible. What I mean by context is you have to understand the context on which the writers were writing in. Those passages, when you read it in its full context, they're not describing a bunch of people being disappeared right before judgment falls. They are simply describing their belief that one day Jesus would appear to rule on the earth. There's nothing mentioned about people being disappeared and being taken up into heaven. This is why context is key. And the same thing applies to Hebrew Israelites, because Hebrew Israelites, even though many Hebrew Israelites will mock Christians for things like this, like their belief in a rapture, well, Hebrew Israelites are really not that much different, because they also pull out of context from the text that God, Yahweh, Yah, is going to come back for them and pull from the four corners of the earth. And what they have done is taken this message and applied it to the plight of black people or Africans that were caught up in the transatlantic slave trade and the Arab slave trade. Now on the cover, it kind of matches, right? Because slavery did scatter Africans to all different areas of the earth. But upon closer inspection of the actual text, you will see for yourself that when the Bible, anytime the Bible mentions world or the whole earth, it is not talking about the whole world or the whole earth as we know it today. Let me give an example. When Jesus told his disciples to go into all the world and to preach the gospel, I want you to take a look at this map here. Well, according to this map, they did just that. The problem is that where these apostles went to, that was at that time, that is what they saw as the whole earth. Places like Central and South Africa, places like what we call today Hawaii, or North America, South America, Canada, Alaska, Russia, places like that, they were not even nowhere near the minds. They weren't even in the minds of people in those days when they would talk about, anytime they mentioned the whole earth or earth. And this same thing goes for the Genesis flood. Again, these are going to be topics that we're going to really delve into. When you read about the Genesis flood, the account in the Bible says the whole earth was covered in water. And that's just simply not true. Now, there are accounts of flooding happening at different time periods all over the earth. However, a synchronized flooding all over the earth, no, that did not happen. And we're going to go through and we're going to actually show you all the actual floods that took place all over the earth. And you're going to see that the time periods, they just don't match. It didn't all happen in this syncopated action. The true historical context is when they would say four corners of the earth, they're talking about a very specific region on the earth at that time as they knew it. Now, you remember the first video I showed you with the guy that was explaining Darby, and he mentioned how his whole dispensationalism teaching was tied into Zionism? Well, I came across a video that is a gentleman who really, I think, did a very good job in tying all of this together and everything I just said in this video when it comes to this whole concept of the rapture, when it comes to, people being disappeared before a judgment falls and all of this ties into Judaism and ancient Jewish teachings. And so that's why it's quite amazing when you listen to people, be it Christians or Hebrew Israelites, who want to try to put great distance between themselves and Jewish people. What they fail to realize is that the Bible that they both hold on to was largely inspired by Judaism. Now, in this video, he's going to talk about this whole, what he believes is the real reason behind Israel's persistence on constantly attacking Gaza. And you may say, okay, well, what does that got to do with everything you just said? Trust me, just listen to it. The video is about 8 minutes long, but the entire video, the entire teaching that he's doing is about a little over an hour long. So I'm going to have links to both in the description of this video below. So without further ado, let's go ahead and roll this video.
What is happening in Israel? Right now, as you know, Israel is besieging, bombarding Gaza. You might have seen the videos on social media. It is disturbing. It is terrible what is happening. The word that is happening, the word that we use for what is happening in Gaza is this word. You are not allowed to say this word on YouTube, but that is the intention. What I will argue, though, is that the truth is far more disturbing than this. What is really happening in Gaza is a ritual sacrifice. And this happens quite often in human history. If you go back and you look at the real history of humanity, this happens quite often. Some of the most famous examples are the Aztecs. We've dug up temples of the Aztecs, and inside the temples are thousands and thousands of human skulls. So before they went to war, they practiced human sacrifice. They would commit mass murder of their enemies in public. So the Aztecs were really famous for this. The Phoenicians, specifically the Carthaginians, we will discuss them later this semester, but the Phoenicians were also famous for a particular type of sacrifice, which is child sacrifice. The Romans wrote histories insulting the Phoenicians for practicing this sort of sacrifice. But the Romans themselves practice human sacrifice. What they would do is that after every major war, they would capture all the major leaders, all their enemies, and they would parade their enemies through the streets of Rome. This is something called a triumph. At the end of the triumph, they would gather enemies at the temple of Jupiter. Jupiter is their god. And then they would strangle to death their enemies. That's sacrifice. That's human sacrifice. They didn't call it that, okay? And they sort of disguised it, but we know for a fact that they did do this. So the question for us is, why is it that this happens? Why do the Aztecs do it? Why do the Phoenicians do it? Why do the Romans do it? And why is it today the Israelis do it in Gaza? And remember, okay, what the Israelis are doing is quite horrific because it is really this sort of sacrifice. Why? Because 47%, almost half of the population of Gaza is under 18 years old. So the majority of people who are getting killed are in fact children. What is most striking or blatant about what's happening in Gaza is that we can all see it for ourselves. And it's almost as though the Israelis want us to see it and want us to hate them. Right? You can see all over the world, popular opinion is turning against Israel. You have these popular protests all around the world protesting what is happening in Palestine. If they really want to do this, right, there are actually much more effective ways of doing this. For example, you could just poison their water. Or you could poison the air so that everyone in Gaza gets a fast cancer, right? We have the technology to do this. So Israel could do it this secretly and no one would talk about it. And in 20 years' time, 30 years' time, the population of Gaza would all be gone. It would be a very secret, right? Instead, they choose to do this in front of the world. And my argument to you is that this is intentional. They want the world to hate them. Because by doing this, they create the ultimate taboo, right? We find this disgusting and contemptuous, so the entire world will unite against Israel. But guess what? That's what their religion wants. In the extreme form of Jewish eschatology, or their religion, they believe that at the end of the world, Israel will fight the entire world and God will help Israel triumph in the end. So what's really happening in Gaza is that there are extremists within the Israel government who want to accelerate the process of the end of the world where Israel will face the world. And if you think about it, the entire idea of this ritual sacrifice is to unite the Israeli population. And what's extremely disturbing and horrifying about it is that this works. Why? Well, let's use an analogy, okay? The analogy is this. In Chinese history, the most popular military stratagem is to fight with a river behind your back. You guys have heard of this strategy, right? Where, okay, an army is losing, okay? It's being scattered by the enemy. So what the general does is forces the army to retreat to a river. And now with the river blocking your escape, you have a choice. You can either drown in the river or you can fight to the death. And most soldiers will choose to fight to the death. And so at this point, the soldiers are unified. They're galvanized. They're energized. And then they find a surge of energy to go and destroy their enemy. Okay, this is the most popular military stratagem in ancient Chinese history. And guess what? It's the same as Israel doing this right now in Gaza. It's the same logic. Yes, you have a question?
So what is the river for the Israel? Like,
yeah, that's a good question. What's a river right here, right? The river is a taboo, right? What's the worst thing you can do in modern society? Killing children, guys, right? So there's no exit for Israel. You either go all the way or the world comes and destroys you anyway. And in fact, what's really interesting is that if you go online, you will see Israelis go around the world and causing trouble everywhere. They're going to start fights. They shout death to the Arabs on public buses in the Western world. It's intentional. They want to unite themselves by dividing the world, by angering the world. Okay? Does that make sense? All right. So this is all very disturbing, and I want to slowly unpack, reveal to you how this works. Okay?
So like him, it is my belief that, yes, the world that we live in today, we are on a stage. And on this stage right now, the stage is centered around one Jewish ritual. So we're going to actually get into this in future videos and, most importantly, in our class, Breaking the Chains. So I would really encourage you, if you really want to delve into this. And the great thing about the class, too, that we're going to have is that you're going to get a full booklet that's going to have all the notes, everything that we're covering, and it's going to give you an opportunity to ask whatever questions you have. We don't know everything, but we want to put aside our time, my wife and I, to really help people to understand this. And of course, it's going to be recorded, and if you can't make it, that's fine. It'll be available for people who cannot make it, but it's going to be a great time for you in a very comfortable, non-threatening environment for you to really ask the questions that in many spaces you're not permitted to ask. And like I said, again, the goal isn't to convert you. The goal isn't for you to join a secret church or assembly that we're building, because we're done with that. We just want to see people walking in truth. And that's what we want to do here. So make sure you stay tuned for that. All the information will be below in the description. But we're living in very interesting times, aren't we? All right, you guys, listen, you take care, and we'll be talking again soon. I'll see you next time.
It's already a new year in the Jewish calendar by September 22nd. As believers, we don't prepare for the new year in January 1st. We prepare for the new year from now. That's why the enemy is raging, because we're about to enter a new season. The new season doesn't start next year. It starts now, Rosh Hashanah. You see, this is the year of 5786 on the Jewish calendar. Behold, the Lord is doing a new thing. And Isaiah said, it, shall you not know it? Shall it not spring forth? It means that whether you're ready for it or not, it's going to happen. There is a new thing, and this is the hour of the new thing. I pray that as believers, we stay sensitive at this hour.
Good morning. I am reporting live. It is 7 a.m., September the 23rd, here in Asheville, North Carolina. And I wanted to show you guys something. Check this out. I have been up since about 6 a.m. before sunrise. Actually, I think I woke up at 5 a.m. I've been watching, and I haven't seen anybody floating upwards. So maybe it hasn't happened yet, but don't worry. I'm sitting out on my